I'm Stephanie Fish with Norton Sports Health, and we do these Tuesday talks for the KDF mini and marathon training program. Since we can't get together, we are trying to get together virtually and still provide you with a lot of great info. So today's topic, we are covering expect the unexpected on race day and also in training too. In case you haven't noticed, as you've been training and as your training's gotten longer, you might have gone out and experienced something completely unexpected. And that's what you should also expect on race day, is something completely unexpected. You can't expect everything to be perfect on race day. The weather might suck. You might have blisters on your feet. You might be thirstier than normal. You might have a headache. And there's a variety of things. And we're going to talk about those today just to kind of calm some of your fears as we get closer to race day. The marathoners, if you were following my training program, you should have actually hit your longest training run this past weekend. And then the mini trainees, you have your longest training run of 12 miles coming up. So we are right at that pivotal point where we're either starting the taper or we're hitting that really long run, and then we just kind of wait on race day and enjoy the taper, enjoy the recovery. So I'm sure during these long runs, a lot of questions pop up in your head, either physically, mentally, maybe you're dealing with a little nagging injury or pain, and we would love to talk about that. So we're gonna talk about that. Couple housekeeping things. You guys are all muted, of course. And we are recording this video so we can post it later in the Facebook group. So if you're not joining us live, you will see it later in the Facebook group and come across your email. So the biggest thing to note here is the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. Any questions you want to ask, throw them in the Q&A. We'll get to them. If it's something that might fit better in a upcoming Tuesday talk, we might just wait until the next Tuesday talk. But today we just want to talk about expect the unexpected, calm a few fears, especially if you're dealing with any injuries right now. We do have a doctor, so now's a great time to ask and make sure you are healthy as you approach the start line. So again, use that Q&A feature, ask us anything. There are no stupid questions. We want to hear from you. So with that being said, let's introduce our special guest here for our Tuesday talk, Dr. Ryan Modlinski. He has the weirdest last name, and we love it, and I finally learned how to say it after like maybe a year. So Modlinski. His practice focuses on family sports medicine, offering non-surgical orthopedic and sports management. So and then he has actually served as a race physician with KDF. This is coming on his 6th year. And I do have a note here that I did forget to ask you. I know that you have done multiple marathons. Yes. And full Ironman, right?
Yes.
How many times?
Ironman, I've done 3 full distance and 2 half distance marathons. I think the last count was like 18 fulls, woo. 17, 18, something like that.
All right, so you fully understand the endurance side of running and biking and swimming. So now, were all of your Ironmans in Louisville?
No, just 2.
Gotcha. Cool. All right. Well, we welcome you. Thank you for joining us for Tuesday Talk. I know you're super busy, but we do want to kind of chat with you on maybe what are your thoughts on expecting the unexpected as we train and as we approach race day and on race day.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me here today. And I want to say, first of all, congratulations to everybody who's made it this far in the training program. Even if you're still running, you're clearly, accomplished at this point in time and almost there to that goal. So we want to provide encouragement, first of all, but want to kind of get you there to that finish line safely, or get you to those goals, maybe not your primary goal, but your secondary goal that you maybe had set out for this race or for this particular kind of achievement this year. I think this year has taught us a lot in expecting the unexpected in the rest of our world. So I think it kind of transitions very nicely into kind of a running talk today of, what to expect those last couple of weeks, what to expect in the, kind of days leading up to your race. Even if this is your first or if this is your 18th race, something new will always happen. I will tell you that from my experience, and you will think, my God, I've seen it all, done it all, and something new will sort of happen that morning, or you could have a deluge, or the weather could be totally unexpected for a race, which around here kind of typically is. I mean, April and May are very unpredictable months. Could have a heat wave. that's really you haven't trained into. We could have stressors from family, kids, jobs, you name it. So we kind of talk about all those things and what those do to your racing and kind of your preparation for that day. I put together just a couple slides just to kind of keep me in focus, and I kind of am very analytical and like to kind of follow plans myself. So I have them, they're a little more geared towards the kind of the last couple weeks of training and kind of how to make some alterations. Far as race day, I'll kind of just fly off the cuff and give you some personal things that I think have served me well over the years. And then lastly, we'll kind of take any questions you guys might have. This is a little bit of a unique time, obviously, this year and with this race. So please ask any questions. There's no dumb questions. I'm sure a million people have asked me those before. So don't think you're alone when you kind of have like, I don't even know where the starting line is, or where do I park my car? Stupid stuff like that is not stupid. Trust me, because it can have lasting ramifications on the day of your race. And we want to control that stress as much as possible.
Yeah. You don't want to cause additional stress as you're going up to the.
No, we want to have this be a fun environment. We want to have this at the end of the day. You may have set out to have a very specific goal, but I always usually set 3 or 4 goals on my day for my race, both during the training and as the training goes along. I might modify those. And my first goal might be my optimal goal, the thing I want to do above everything else. And that might be a PR. That might be just to finish. That might be to not stop and walk that particular race. That might be, to finish, and feeling good. That's kind of my loftiest goal. And then every goal under that sort of is kind of a little bit more achievable. And kind of if things don't go perfect, I still meet goals that I set out for myself. So first of all, I think the mindset going in is really, really, really important. Not to have one particular goal, but to have kind of a plan A, B, C, and D, just in case things come up. There's still things you can succeed in doing with that race, even if it doesn't meet your loftiest goals. And I think the goal is to have this be a lifelong journey or be a many-year journey in sort of your overall health and fitness, not one race for the rest of your life. Trust me, there's going to be plenty of races. We're going to be back to having 40,000 people at a race event down the future. It's coming soon. This won't be the only time you'll line up to that starting line, I promise. If we're doing our job well, certainly it won't be the last time. So, let me see if I can share these with you. We'll kind of run through a couple of them. It just brings up a couple scenarios. Can you see those?
Yep, good to go.
All right, so aptly entitled Expect the Unexpected. Let's see. So I stole this quote. This is not mine. I can't remember where I stole it from, but I certainly think it sort of serves it out. The well thought out training plan, the motivation, the determination simply aren't enough sometimes to overcome life. Okay. And that basically says you can't control everything when it comes to being a runner. I know we love to control our logs, control our mileage, control our rehab, control our workouts. And that's great because that helps us to kind of deal with the chaos that might ensue. But you might be getting sick. You could come down with a sinus infection the week of the race. You could have family issues, a sick family member, a loved one, kids acting unruly that you can't really control that might steer your attention away and keep you up all night. You could have travel sort of interruptions getting here. If you're traveling from out of the state or you're traveling from the remote portions of Kentucky, you could have issues trying to get here, and that could cause a stress in your body trying to deal with kind of your training or extended travel with your work that prevents you from training the last couple weeks. You could have work stress that's hard to kind of quantify for some people, and that increases your cortisol, that increases the stress hormones in your body that can affect your runs. There can be weather delays or weather sort of extreme rain or temperatures as far as heat goes. You've been training most of your stuff in relatively cool, cold climate, which is good, but that's harder as we get into these spring, summer races. You've not performed in potentially, and we have one year, gosh, it was about 4 or 5 years ago. It was 88, 89, 90, muggy, hot, humid. No one had trained any runs in that. So to perform optimally that day, it was just a completely impossible kind of scenario. And then lastly, you could have some injuries that are kind of nagging. Sometimes those are sort of normal nagging kind of little injuries. Sometimes they're actually serious problems. And so it's good that if they're continuing to progress or continuing to be there and preventing you from completing your runs, that you check with someone to see if these are some things that you can run through and kind of alter those goals, or if these are things that might, curtail your overall even participation in this, or even at the level, maybe backing down from the marathon to the half marathon in this scenario. So these are all the things that I kind of wanted to kind of even just sort of mention. We talk about downshifting or sort of moving down the list of those goals like we just talked about. We have an idea of what we want to accomplish. That's great. We can all have that goal, but there doesn't have to just be that one. So you're capable of more than what you've done at this point in time. Your training runs have been slow. They've been methodical. They've been getting you to that distance. You're going to typically perform better at the last day when you kind of have endurance and adrenaline running. But if you have to downshift to a lesser goal, that's not really giving up. That's not quitting here. That's not being successful. Again, this is choosing a lifetime of fitness, health, running over one single race. It's hard to PR. It's hard to accomplish some of those goals. This is not meant to be an easy task. This is meant to be a really sort of a lesson learned in, a consistent effort over 3 or 4 months. And that, can hinge on a lot of those factors we just talked about. So don't think that if you miss on that perfect PR today, or you miss on that perfect PR on race day, that's it. There's many more opportunities. So, downshifting or changing those goals based on those things is not necessarily a bad thing, okay? Addressing the mental sides of missing training runs. Let's say you have some family issues or illness that kind of gets in the way and you miss a couple training runs. Get ahead of it. Don't beat yourself up on, well, I didn't get all 5 runs in this week, or I didn't get those, that long run. I had to cut it short because I only had 2 hours to, run on Saturday because I had kids' soccer games or whatever. Don't beat yourself up for it. You've done the bulk of the work at this point in time. You're not going to get deconditioned by, if you ultimately have to cut your 12-mile long run down to a 9 or 8 mile run. You're not going to sort of all of a sudden be 25% less prepared by the time you come to race day. So don't get yourself mentally burned out on being sort of really stagnant to that training plan. It is a plan. It is meant to be flexible. So really kind of get on top of that mental anguish that you feel for missing some of those things, whether that's maybe doing a cross training day, maybe enjoying just the hard work you've put in and having an extra day off or recovery day. Consider shorter runs. If you really can't finish, the full entirety of your training plan, that's okay. Consider some shorter runs that at least allow you to be able to do something, allow you to be able to get out, get some muscle activation. Let's say you only finish, instead of your day may call for a 3 to 4 mile taper and you really just only get in 3 miles. You're like, I'm exhausted. I'm tired today. I didn't sleep well. I've been dealing with work stress. That's okay. Get in what you can, because that's going to mean more for you than really the specifics of what your training runs might call. Lastly, when downshifting, if the worst things happen, sometimes a do not start or a do not sort of run through some of these things that can be more serious might be better than a do not finish and injury, both for your physical health, but also your mental health. Regroup, figure out what maybe went wrong, and then let's pick another race down the road while we get healthy, while we get kind of rehabbed on these things, if we're talking a much more serious injury. But this is where a physician or a healthcare professional or some of the running coaches that you may be utilizing can really help you and say, hey, you got a stress fracture. I know you've been training for 4 months, but you could really do some serious harm that could cause you to be, sidelined for 6 months, 9 months, and next year to recover. So it may not be worth trying to just run through the pain in this scenario. So really trying to help differentiate those and try to kind of know when it's better to kind of pull back and just have a do not start. It doesn't mitigate the training you put in. It just means we're going to kind of utilize that training for another run down the road. Sometimes your running, can be the main stressor that's really driving kind of your pains and your stress and your anxiety. So, when you have to kind of pull back, okay? Cortisol from everything that stresses our body, whether that's anxiety over the race, our jobs, our families, or just the current state of affairs in the world, but that plays a very stressful role when you go to exercise. Sometimes running is helpful, but sometimes on these hardest workouts, that extra stress, that extra angst can really drive our heart rates up and really make a run that we've done 5, 6, 7 other times, or hey, I've done 10 miles pretty easy before, but I've also not been in this stressful situation before. So, know when, you don't feel good on a run, on a long run, you feel just a really lousy day. Think of all the other things that might be going on in your life and be okay with cutting some of those runs a little bit shorter, okay? Give yourself a little extra time to recover because you've put in the work. At this point in time, I would sort of prioritize recovery, sleep, nutrition, wellness more than I would sticking to the exact training recommendations that you might have on your log. So make sure you're prioritizing your sleeps. If you're having to do 10 million things, don't get up an extra hour earlier to get in a recovery run or a 3-mile taper run. If it's just not in the cards, it's not in the cards. Don't shortchange your health and don't shortchange sleep over anything else. That's walking into that race day, as good as you can feel is better than the extra mile or 2 or 3 miles that you can get in the week of, okay? So I really prioritize sleep, especially the week, 2 weeks leading up to that run. Nothing should get in the way of you getting recovered restorative sleep. If you can't get, again, the full training requirement in, try to get at least a little short run in. Even if it's just like, I'm just going to go out for 30 minutes just to get away from the house, or I'm just going to get away from the job. It's not even going to be what my run calls for today, but I just want to go out and have just a fun run for 30, 35 minutes, try to decompress, walk away from those stressors in your life. And that's where running can be beneficial to you, even if it's not what your day is sort of calling for. So sometimes that can be a difference of, making you be able to kind of go back the next day and feel a little bit better when you do have another run scheduled or 2 days later. So it doesn't always have to be exactly what's on your training logs. And lastly, listening to your body and knowing the difference between major issues and just those taper pains or aches and pains, that's kind of where, if you're a novice runner, this might be a little bit more difficult. This might be where you have to talk to your running coaches, talk to some people you've trained with, potentially even come in and get seen by a physician or someone who's got some experience with these types of injuries. In the future, that might mean leaving a little extra time in your training schedule, correcting maybe some of the cross-training and periodization that might happen. This is a slide that I think is more for the future, not necessarily race day. But lastly, trying to determine how bad this is. There's a big difference between running with a little bit of plantar fasciitis and running with a stress fracture. Those are two totally different things. You can run through a plantar fasciitis, and sure, you're going to be a little sore a couple days after, maybe even for a week after, but you're not jeopardizing your health. You run through a stress fracture, you could really be putting yourself at risk for the next 3, 4, 5, 6 months. So we really want to help you kind of know what those differences are, especially if you're not not an experienced runner. That may be kind of something you've never felt before. So that's what we're here for. So get help early. Don't make up miles. If you missed a couple training runs, don't catch up, okay? Don't feel like you got to add extras to the run next week or add extras to the Saturday run. If you miss a week or so, if you've missed it because of just not feeling good, feeling run down, take a couple 1 or 2 easy runs that are maybe just good 3, 4 mile easy runs. See how you feel. If those kind of get you back to feeling good, then typically you can pick up right where your schedule was left off. You don't have to kind of play catch up. You can kind of just move ahead a couple days and catch up to where your training schedule is. It's not going to be that big of a difference to your overall cardiovascular fitness. If you miss a couple weeks, then I typically tell people, let's address what's going on. Let's kind of make up for that sort of pain. Let's get you feeling better. And let's go back to the last good week you had. Let's not try to jump to where you should be. Let's go back a couple weeks to where you still felt good. Maybe that's the max amount of training you can put forth for this race. That's okay. We can work with that, and we can then sort of alter your goals for that, exercise. And maximize recovery, like we stressed before. Your training effect, how well and how prepared you are is a combination of both the workload you put in, but it's also a combination of how well you recover. And if you're not recovering, if you're cheating, if you're not sleeping well, if you're trying to get in extra runs at all hours of the day and trying to kind of do those things, you're actually ultimately cheating your overall fitness. So those are really not good ideas the last couple weeks before the race. Finally, the last couple weeks, stress the things you can control. Eat well, make sure your diet is really solid that last week, 2 weeks. Don't overeat, but don't, kind of eat really terrible foods. You had your times, during the course of 3 months. Let's stick to good, healthy stuff that's going to really give you the energy that you need. Work on other recovery strategies like ice baths, get a light soft tissue massage if there's some areas that are kind of some trigger points that are bothering you. Make sure you're getting extra sleep, maybe some more foam rolling that week, maybe even just a light stretching day instead of a run day. Really focus on feeling as optimal as you can the day of the race. Again, cheating one training run is not going to make or break you come the day of the race. So those are kind of the approaches of getting you to the starting line. The off the cuff kind of things that I recommend, as far as race day, kind of try to do the best you can to sort of control the things you can, pack appropriately, pack a couple different things in case the weather turns south, a longer jacket for when you get done with your runs. It's always better to shed clothes as you go throughout the race rather than try to look for something to warm up with. So take something that, a sweatshirt that really isn't, a valuable concern to you. Maybe the morning of the race, it's chilly when you're getting there, when you're going through your warm up. Hour later, race comes around, bam, it's 10 degrees warmer, you're feeling good. You can shed that sweatshirt usually at the starting line. A lot of races will have donation boxes that you can then donate that sweatshirt. Or worst case scenario, you shed it during the race, it's no big deal, okay? So you can always shed clothes as you go along. You can't warm up as you go through it. It's know where you park, know where your designated areas are. I typically like parking closer towards the finish line, rather than the starting line. That typically to me means I got less walking when I get done. Look for areas that are even outside the normal meetups with the family. Maybe set a designated area that where you and your loved ones are going to get together and meet up so that you're not stressful, kind of worrying about where they're going to be, trying to call them. Plan that out before the day of the race. Plan your diet, okay? The last long runs are the great days to kind of practice your diet, practice your race day preparation. Get up around the time when you're going to race or when your designated race is. Try to eat, in the timing range that you want. Work on the amounts that you're going to eat. Work on how much nutrition you need during the course of your run. This is kind of where you're fine-tuning those preparations. And then, but be willing to kind of have a little bit of flexibility. You might be a little bit more thirsty during the run if it's a hotter day. You might feel a little fatigued, you need a little bit more sugar or goo or Gatorade sort of choose. But use this last training run or this last long run to really kind of iron out those details of how much you really need to consume both prior to the race and during the race. That way it's not like, oh my gosh, how much do I do, at each one of these stops? Do I stop at every stop? Do I stop at every other stop? Do I take 1 cup of water? Do I take a cup of water and Gatorade? These are stressful things that we don't want to even think about. We want to kind of just be no-brainers by the time we walk through that race. So I think that those are big things that I think that really make a big difference. Use this as a practice run, get you to the starting line, feeling as good as you can, optimize those recovery strategies in the last week or two, and then really, kind of be willing to kind of play off the cuff when the day of the race comes, depending on the weather and some of those other last day factors. Don't sort of think that if it's a really hot day and it's way in excess of what we would normally be training in, it's probably not going to be a PR day. Let's, we'll downshift that goal, and our goal might be to finish, well, finish healthy, finish well, maybe not have to see us in the medical tent. That might be a goal for some people. And trust me, on hot, nasty days, that can be, a victory in and of itself. So, don't be too rigid to those types of things. Have some fun with it. Be flexible. Enjoy the moment. Don't try to kind of stress about all those little details.
I think being flexible is a big takeaway there too. A lot of people, some people are just saying, hey, I just want to finish because this is my first or my second, or, I haven't done very many. I just want to finish. I think that's a amazing goal. Especially people that are still not very versed on running marathons or half marathons, that are setting these PRs of keeping these certain paces and things, just be careful with that, because expect the unexpected. That might not be the day that you keep the exact pace that you want. So there is a lot of things that factor into that. And just to touch on pacing, it's actually happened to a few people in the group saying, I started running my long run, and the first 5 miles, I felt so awesome. And then the second mile, the second 5 miles, I felt terrible. It's a marathon. Like of course you're going to feel good in the first 5 miles because you got adrenaline and you still have your breakfast in your system. And you still have all your hydration and you're feeling great. What about the remaining 20 miles? So you gotta, it's a marathon, not a sprint, like everybody says.
This is supposed to be a difficult, achievement. This is not supposed to be something that you just show up the day of the race and complete. You've put why it takes 3-4 months to prepare for this, I think gives it justification for just how difficult of a task it is to do well and to do healthy. I never recommend a time goal for your first couple marathons. If this is the first time you're moving up from a half to a full, you can have some idea of a goal in the back of your head, but I really discourage people the first go round of a marathon to have any expectations of what that time is because they've never gone through that. So, you can have a goal as a first-time parent, but you throw that out the window the day they come home, okay? It's crazy, all right? So you might feel really good. You're like, man, I could crush this. I could do under 4 hours, or I could do under 5 hours. You might feel like that on mile 2 or 3 or 4. That feeling's going to change, okay? Expect that. And don't think you're going to feel amazing the whole time. There's a reason why, runners share common themes or common stories with each other. It's because they happen to us all, self included, even doing 18. You've done a lot of you think you have all this experience, and it still never ceases to amaze me how much, little things creep up during the middle of a race, or, you feel really great. The temperature's perfect. It's a little bit cool and crisp. Man, I'm just crushing it. Trust your training. Trust what you've been preparing for. The day of the race is not the day to kind of, go a minute faster than what you've been preparing for. It's not going to sustain the whole race. And you're much more likely to hit some of those problems later on in the race. So even if you feel good, trust where your training has had you, in the early going especially. I'd rather you save a little bit and be able to kind of still feel that good in mile 11, 12, 13 if you're doing the half, or mile 18, 19, 20 if you're doing the full, rather than you've spent it all and now we're just trying to kind of limp to the finish line. So don't resist that urge in the early going too. I think with the pacing to think that this is going to be, significantly faster than what you're preparing for, because it really won't. You might be a little bit faster, or you might just feel that good endorphins and that really adrenaline kicking in, but you're really not going to crush what your training has really been designated for. That's what your body is ready to do. So, don't, if you're early, in this and kind of just starting out, make that to finish and feel good. That's a victory in itself. If this is your 5th, 6th, 7th one you are trying to PR, trust that you've got to stick to that training, or trust that pacing for 26 miles or 13 miles. It's not about beating that pacing in the first 5 miles to then leave you some leftover time at the end, because oftentimes it's going to end up slowing you down because you're going to be kind of hitting that wall. So, don't exceed your pace by much. Even if you're 10, 15 seconds ahead, great. But that's kind of where I would be, not minute ahead, 2 minutes ahead in the early going. That's going to get you into trouble in the long run.
Exactly. I mean, if it was easy, everyone would do it. So
right.
Yesterday I actually looked up, and who knows if these stats are right, but I just asked Google, what's the percentage of people in the world that have completed a marathon? And it told me 0.17%.
Yep.
That is 0.17% of the world
has
completed
gotten
a marathon
from the starting line to the finish line.
Yeah. Done. So that's if you guys do this, that's awesome. And for the half marathon, that's still only 1%. They told me 1% of the world has completed a half marathon. So if just doing the training program, you're probably in a small percentage. So it's amazing if you guys can do this. You're in a very small percentage of accomplished people in the world. 0.17 and 1%. That's small.
I guarantee in your family groups or your church group or your work group, the first thing out of your mouth is, I ran the Derby, half marathon this weekend. No one's going to very few people are going to go, what was your time? Most people are going to say.
Half of them don't even know how long that is.
Yeah, most people are going to say, wow, That's something I would never do. That's something I would never accomplish. Like, that's amazing. That took you 3 months or 4 months of a goal and a preparation, commitment, and a diligence to kind of stick to it. That's the goal. That's the win. It's not necessarily 420 versus 430. Those are secondary things. And so don't get caught up in the numbers. Enjoy the success that you've earned and enjoy the success that you've worked hard to get.
Yeah, and there were a couple of questions I did want to get to on the Facebook group. Looks like we have some Q&As too, so I'll get to you guys here in a second. And I mean, I'm just kind of stimulating the Facebook group just to kind of throw out whatever's coming to their head, because I was like, okay, we ran 20 miles this past weekend. What were you thinking about? And Angela Kelly told me that she said she was telling herself, what the heck were you thinking when you signed up for a full marathon? And I think that statistic that I just said might have been one of those things. You are a elite few in the world that not only signed up for a marathon, but you're going to do it. Yep. You trained for it, and you're going to finish.
Yep. Yeah, those statistics are pretty similar to what I think I remember reading the last time I read it. They're very popular, but at the end of the day, a lot of the popularity is in, you know, people that have had fun doing their first one and run again, you know. So there's still a lot of people on the sideline that have never got to that starting line and never walked across it, and certainly never got to the finish line. So, you know, what we're trying to do is breed something that is a fun, healthy, lifelong journey, not even a 3-month. We're going to embrace this 3 or 4 month success, but we're going to take it and extrapolate it out for the next 10 years of your life to 20 years of your life, so that you have fun with this, you enjoy this, you then can start setting newer goals down the road. But we want to make this be a journey that you're going to enjoy for a much longer time than just 3 to 4 months.
And I am one of those people that the first time I did a marathon across the finish line, I said never again. I signed up for many more after that. First time I did Ironman, I finished, I said never again. I'm already signed up for another. So it kind of, you know, that pain comes and go. Like you said, like having a kid for a woman, you have one kid, never again, I'm never doing that again. And then you have another kid.
Yep. You learn that you can handle these things. You learn that you're not going to be perfect. You learn that stuff's not going to go just the way you had planned it or the way you had trained, but you still accomplish your other goals. You still get to that finish line. You still walk away and look back at it 2 months later and go, that was a lot of fun. I want to do that again, but I want to do it better. And that becomes sort of the trigger that I think is the positive things that we're looking for, not just, God, you know, that was miserable. I don't ever want to do that.
Well, we all like to commiserate together. So that's sure. Kind of the fun part of it. We all like to talk about how much it sucks, but you know, you can't talk about how much it sucks unless you're doing it with us. So come and do that with us.
But if you're in your running groups, I'll guarantee you, if you start just talking with people, and I don't care if they've done 1 or 10 or 15, if they tell you they've completed a marathon and they didn't have anything hurt or anything, you know, bother them throughout the course of it, they are lying. They are clearly lying to you.
Yeah, I don't hang out with people like that. You need to
get some new friends and some new running partners, because they're not telling you the truth.
Right. And then I did have a question from the group. A couple things from Rosie Heinrichs, I think. She was asking about how often to replenish with race nutrients. If she's kind of wondering if it's more of a mileage or a time thing. What are your thoughts on that?
So, you know, the big things are, you know, we're like we talk about planning ahead. It's going to be different depending on obviously your pace, obviously the temperature and the environment. But you can have a kind of a baseline goal. So the good way to kind of estimate how much your nutritional needs or your fluid needs really are as a kind of a set point is really, I tell people on that last training run, weigh yourself, you know, get out of the shower or get ready up in the morning, weigh yourself with none of your gear on. Okay, good old birthday suit, jump on the scale. Do what you think is a normal amount of hydration, okay? Do what feels natural to you during that last training run. But document, get an idea of how much fluid you've actually consumed. Don't just have no idea how much you put in your bottles or no idea how many things you have an idea of quantifying how much you did. Shower, get back on that scale and look at kind of how much weight loss or weight gain or neutrality that you have. Let's say you consumed 160 ounces just for, you know, normal sake to kind of make the math easy. That's about 16 ounces for a pound. That's about 10 pounds. So if you're neutral, that means that you've consumed the right amount of fluid during that training run. If you're plus, you maybe had a little too much. If you're on the negative side, you probably could do a little bit better job. Then you need to figure it out, look on the race path, see how many aid stations. Okay, there's 10 aid stations. I need about 160 ounces. So, you can start to do the math yourself and figure out how much you need. Then figure out, have a fudge factor. If it's a hot day, then compared to what you're training, you're probably going to need a little bit more. If it's a cooler day and you're really, kind of feeling good, you might need a little bit less, but I discourage you from going too far down. Don't back down off of that kind of set mark, but don't be afraid to go a little bit above if it's a really hot day or you're out there a little bit longer, you're going a little bit slower than what you expect. Certainly don't be afraid to kind of manipulate that to go up a little bit, but try to have some baseline amount of how much you individually need, because those demands are different depending on your fitness level, your age, how much you have trained. It might be different for me versus you, but that last day of training run, kind of weighing yourself before and after and getting an idea of how much fluid you really need will serve you very well come race day, because then you won't be worried about having to stop and getting 1 versus 3 cups or getting dehydrated. You kind of will have a better idea of how much you need.
And the water is a big important thing. A lot of you guys ask me questions about them. It is different this year. On the Indiana side, I believe they said they're going to have mini water bottles that you'll grab and go. And then on the marathon side along the river walk, it's going to be what they call water monsters, which is like a pedal push where you refill your own thing. So you have to figure out what you're carrying on your body to fill or refill. And if you decide you don't want to carry anything for the majority of the race, then you're going to have to hold on to that empty water bottle that you got on the Indiana side. So I do believe the official water stop locations are going to be announced this week. I don't think they're out there yet. So when that's announced, plan ahead. Okay, I know I'm going to stop at mile 2, 4, 6, or 1, 3, whatever it is, whatever works for you. Figure out how much you need. I did have another question on here about race recovery from Rosie. She said when she was finishing the race that her calves were seizing up. I'm guessing that's a hydration issue.
More than likely, it's probably a hydration. It's very common, especially in some of the novice, runners or people that, kind of miscalculated that. Usually muscle cramps as a whole, I'd say, are usually break down to usually more of a hydration issue and more potentially not trained to kind of go that distance. But I would say overwhelmingly that's a hydration issue in majority of the patients, just a miscalculation. The big thing is give yourself 24 hours to kind of recover. You're going to have some cramping. You're going to have some muscle aches if you kind of miscalculated. You can't make that all up in 30 minutes at the finish line just cramming a bunch of water. Give yourself a full day, maybe even 2 days to kind of make up for where your deficits are. High salt containing foods for the next 24 hours will make you hold on to that water. And then kind of get an idea when you start to kind of pee or when you start to kind of, go to the restroom afterwards, you're getting closer to being back to that euhydration or normal hydration. If you still haven't peed after you finish the race, you're probably a little on the dry side and you really want to kind of push those fluids over the next day, 2 days. You really don't necessarily for like a half marathon need a whole lot of Gatorade. That's sugar. You can get your sugar, you can get your, energy from other sources, mostly water. As you get into the marathon, there's kind of a balance between the fluids that you're taking between water and Gatorade, but you don't have to drink Gatorade. Sure, the electrolytes are great, but a lot of times with some of your race nutrition and stuff that you might be packing on your body, that has electrolytes, that has the energy that you're going to need. You don't necessarily have to always get that just from Gatorade. But usually the half marathoners, it's not a necessity until you've been out there more than 2-3 hours or so, if it's indeed the case that you need a whole lot of electrolytes or nutrition from the Gatorade. You can probably get by with just water.
Yep. And then just real quickly, something I wanted to note was, since the race looks very different this year, I really advise you guys to be practicing running at your corral start time.
Yep.
Not everybody's starting at 7 a.m. And let's just go ahead and expect the weather to be 30 degrees and snowing at the start and then 80 degrees and rain at the finish. Okay, let's just go ahead and plan on that. Expect the unexpected and the absolute worst weather ever, because we live in Kentucky. So I really advise you guys to be practicing at your corral start time. Some of you guys have 11 a.m., 12 p.m. start times for a marathon. You're going to be running all afternoon. So make sure your body knows how to handle the morning, eating, sleep, drinking, before you're going and starting a marathon at 12 p.m. Okay,
Right.
That's a big thing.
That's a big change for most typical marathon races. I mean, most of the time you're out the door, you're running early in the morning, 6 a.m., 7, because you have life that's going to get in the way. This particular year, we're going to have people running in times they're not used to running it. And it may not be optimal, again, just from that sheer fact, for running your best possible race, the fastest race compared to what you're training for. We don't know that until kind of we see what the weather really looks like. But I will tell you, it will feel different running at 11 to 4 than it will feel running from 5:30 in the morning to 11 in the morning. That is guaranteed. So that last training run, you really want to kind of get an idea of what does it feel like to run in the middle of the day. I need sunscreen. I don't usually need that. I need, more hydration. You want to know what you're feeling like at least once to kind of
dress in layers.
Yes. Do I need, do I need much less clothes because I'm starting at 11? When should I have my breakfast? When should I have a snack before that run? These are things to figure out a week ahead of time, 2 weeks ahead of time, because then if something doesn't go right, you have time to kind of make those adjustments for the week. You're not kind of figuring out on the fly and then being like, oh gosh, I'm starting at the starting line now and I'm starving. That's not a good scenario to be in when you're getting ready to start a 26-mile race. And if you just eat like you normally do at 6 a.m. and your start time's not till 11, you're going to be in trouble. So use this to kind of figure out when your start time, your corral is, get an idea. The weather's getting warmer, so, if you have to run at 11 a.m., try as hard as you can this week or next week to kind of get out and run in the middle of the day. Even if it's not for the full amount, just see what it's like running in that temperature, because it's going to feel a lot different than mornings or nighttime runs. I will promise you that. So definitely prepare.
Awesome. Okay, and I want to get to our Q&As with definitely. So we do have a few trainees that they have some lingering injuries or just little things that have maybe started to bother them after our long run or things that have been going the whole training. So I do want to get with those people here. So Jeff says, I was training for the full marathon and completed the training through week 8, which was 16 miles, and then was diagnosed with tendonitis in his right foot. He's been resting, but hasn't ran for 3 weeks. So recently he's been able to walk with no pain, started running some short distances. He did drop down to the mini. So that was a first good decision, I think.
Good decision.
Drop down to the mini, yeah. But he's wondering if you recommend to seek an evaluation before he goes and starts those longer distance runs again.
I would say he could do one of two things. If he goes back and starts to do a couple lighter runs, like a 3-4 mile, just easy, non-stressful, non-speed work. Don't try to make your first run back to be a distance run. Go out for 4 miles. A 4-mile run will tell you a lot about how you feel. Okay. That'll give you a good idea of how sort of ready you are to potentially, push things a little bit further. So I like the idea that he dropped down. Try a short run of 4 miles or so to see how that feels. If that feels good, then try to kind of bridge that gap. Try to find maybe another 7-8 mile run in there as a long run. Don't worry. If you got up to 16 miles, your body can handle 13 miles. I promise.
Muscle memory.
You're not going to lose all of that 16-mile conditioning in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, okay? Statistically, in about 2 weeks, you might lose about 10% of your fitness if you don't run. So, 10% off 16, you're down to like a 14-mile run. That's greater than 13.1. So you can handle this. I wouldn't try to, again, get it all back. If they go for that 4-mile run and it's still really a little naggy, but you're able to finish, I might run it by a physician or at least somebody who's kind of got a little bit more experience to kind of just make sure and give you sort of the stamp. It may not be your best race, but there are some of those ones that you can continue to run through that, as long as you're not having a limp, as long as you're not, limping while competing in or training in your runs, as long as you're not getting, increasing amounts of pain or increasing amounts of dysfunction as you go through those. But I certainly would say he could try that on his own, or if that doesn't go well with that shorter run, he could certainly, consult with a physician to kind of get an idea of what he's really dealing with, and maybe some more specific alterations of that race day if you wanted to know.
Okay. Let's see. So I have another one here. I've been having some lower back pain as the training runs have gotten longer. I'm assuming that's from poor form due to be more tired. What sort of recovery exercises do you have for low back pain?
In general, that can be from a couple of different things, but in general, a common reason why a lot of runners get low back pain is they tend to kind of lean a little bit forward. Number one is they get a little tired and fatigued. So try to kind of keep good form when you're running. Try to keep that upright. It does two things. Number one, helps your form, but it also helps open up your lungs. So you actually get more kind of respiration there when you're kind of not leaning forward. So don't kind of be trudgingly kind of leaning into that. Try to maintain that form. You're going to feel better because you're going to get better oxygenation. But in general, a lot of times runners will get low back pain because their hamstrings are too tight. So as you've started to run a lot, you get this much stronger hamstring, but it gets progressively tighter and tighter and tighter. Well, that pulls down on the low back because those are really stronger muscles now than they've ever been. So let's not get those muscles get stiff and tight while they're getting stronger. So I always recommend good hamstring stretching, soft tissue massage of the hamstring. Get out that foam roller, get out the myofascial roller, the foam, the running stick that people like to use. Different techniques work a lot more on hamstring than I really would low back. At this point in time, you're not going to get much stronger core or strength in that low back. You're probably better off in just making sure that your hamstrings have better mobility, better flexibility in this last week or two.
Cool. Yeah, so there are a lot of people that are still dealing with injuries, and I want to put it out there again, as you made note. If you're dealing with a major injury and you're signed up for the marathon, drop to the mini, maybe defer, maybe make another decision. You don't want to try and push it and then just come out with an even worse injury.
Yeah. That's probably the best advice I really have. And that takes a lot of self-introspection to kind of really make that decision. It's a hard decision to make. I've had to cancel one due to a major injury, and it was tough. It was an out-of-town marathon, one that I planned, one I was looking forward to, one we built a vacation around. So we still went up, did the vacation, still had fun. But, I lived to race another day and lived to kind of do that one again. I ended up doing it 3 years later and, and had just as much fun, doing it down the road, but certainly didn't compound my problem by pushing through. And it was something that would have been a bad injury. I had actually a stress fracture of the 5th metatarsal. So it was something that I would have pretty much rest assured would have made worse. So those are things that, if you're having a hard time making that last call, let somebody else help you make that decision, because sometimes we can make bad decisions just because of our drive. We think our drive can exceed what our capabilities are. And that can get us in trouble. I mean, that's a great drive to have to kind of finish a goal, but it's also a real fine line between that and kind of really impairing your future running, or running for the next 6 months, or having one experience where you run through a marathon just absolutely miserable, especially if you're running through an injury, can really negatively hamper your desire to really do this again or do this down the road, and really change the course of events for years to come. So we want this to be fun. We want this to still be enjoyable. I'm not saying it's going to feel wonderful, but there's a real fine line between, having some normal aches and pains and running through a major injury.
Yep. All great stuff. Thank you so much for being here, Dr. Modlinski.
No worries.
This is all great info. The Norton Sports Physicians are here to help, as well as Court Physical Therapy is here to help. So please take care of those little issues you may or may not be having. Don't push it. Don't hurt yourself further. We want to get you to the finish line. And I do want to take a second here to mention our next 2 Tuesday talks. It's our last 2. They're very important. Next Tuesday is mental preparedness for race day with Dr. Vanessa Shannon. Your mind is going crazy right now, especially when you start to taper. You're like, wait, I'm not running as much as I was. Oh, my mind. We're going to take care of that. We're going to calm your nerves. We're going to get you over the mental hurdle. We're going to get you to the finish line mentally, because physically you're ready. So we're going to talk about that next week. And then the Tuesday before the race, we are actually doing a live chat at Packet Pickup with the race director of KDF. So all those questions about parking and water and medals and t-shirts and finish line, we're going to talk about them and calm all of those nerves too. So 2 of the very most important Tuesday talks are coming up. Make sure you pre-register. We want to see you there. And also, it's Tuesday, guys. It's going to be 80 degrees today. You need to go out and get your run in. So get your run in on Tuesday. Again, thank you so much, Dr. Modlinski, for joining us.
No worries. Thank you guys very much, and good luck with your races, and enjoy the taper, enjoy the hard work you've put in up to this point in time. You've earned it.
Awesome. Okay, thank you all. Go get your run in. We'll see you next Tuesday. Thank you.